The old Toyota wasn't much, but it was all James Mitchell had. It was the rattling, rust-bucket chariot that carried his whole world to school each morning. That world had a name, Emma, and for her, he'd do anything. So when he saw the woman standing alone by her smoking car, drenched and defeated in the pouring rain, he didn't think twice. He didn't think about the early morning bus ride he and Emma would now have to take. He didn't think about how he'd get to his second job after his shift at the garage. He just saw someone who needed help. He pulled over, the Toyota's engine groaning in protest. He handed the woman his keys, the metal still warm from his pocket. "Take it," he said, his voice firm over the drumming of the rain. "Take it as long as you need." The woman, her simple clothes plastered to her skin, just stared at him, her eyes wide with a kind of disbelief he'd never seen before. She thanked him, her voice a quiet whisper against the storm. If only James knew. If only he knew he'd just handed the keys to his entire life over to Sarah Chen. The reclusive, phantom-like tech billionaire. A woman who lived in a world of gold-plated everything, who could buy and sell entire countries before breakfast. A woman who was desperately searching for something real in a universe of fake smiles and hidden daggers. As she drove away in his beat-up car, Sarah glanced in the rearview mirror. She saw the kind stranger, a mechanic in his worn coveralls, already getting soaked to the bone, a small, lonely figure against the gray curtain of rain. And in that single fleeting moment, with the squeak of his old windshield wipers counting the seconds, she made a decision. She was going to change his life forever. But she had no idea what she was about to unleash. And James had no idea that his simple act of kindness wasn't the beginning of a fairy tale. It was the first move in a dangerous game he never even knew he was playing. The alarm screamed at 4:30 a.m. James's calloused hand shot out, silencing it before the noise could stir Emma from her dreams. In the faint gray light of their tiny apartment, he moved like a ghost, navigating the obstacle course of his daughter's life. A stack of advanced physics textbooks here, a half-finished circuit board there. She was 12, but her mind worked on a level he could barely comprehend. The pride he felt was a physical ache in his chest, an ache worth every single double shift he pulled to keep her in that fancy school, Wellington Prep. The face in the bathroom mirror was a stranger he knew too well. Tired eyes, dark circles that looked like bruises, and streaks of gray invading his black hair far too early. It had been 5 years since his wife, Maria, had packed her bags and left them for what she called a better life in California, leaving behind nothing but a pile of bills and a gaping hole in their world. There was no time to feel sorry for himself. Pity didn't pay the rent. He pulled on his Navy mechanic's coveralls, the patches on the knees a testament to thousands of hours spent under other people's cars at Pete's auto shop. The morning ritual was a silent dance. He put the coffee on, its bitter smell the only luxury he allowed himself. He packed Emma's lunch, peanut butter and honey. The jelly had been too expensive this week. An apple, and a couple of cookies their neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, had given them. Their kitchen was a closet with a stove, but it was theirs. In the corner, the broken washing machine sat like a monument to their constant struggle, forcing them on weekly pilgrimages to the laundromat 6 blocks away. He'd tried to fix it, but some things were just broken beyond repair. At 6:15 a.m., he gently shook Emma awake. "Rise and shine, Einstein," he whispered, his special name for her. She blinked open her eyes, the same sharp intelligence shining back at him that always left him breathless. "Is the car back?" she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. "Not yet, sweetheart. Soon," he lied, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. Hope was the one thing he couldn't afford to lose. While Emma dressed, he checked her homework, pages filled with equations that looked like a foreign language to him. But the teacher's comments, scrawled in red ink, told him everything he needed to know. Exceptional. Beyond her years. A true prodigy. His daughter was going places. He just had to find a way to keep the ground from crumbling beneath her feet. The bus ride was an adventure for Emma, a nightmare for James. She pointed out buildings, her breath fogging the glass, while he mentally calculated the time, the cost, the income he was losing from his morning delivery shift. "Dad," she said suddenly, her voice serious, "Jason's mom said my science fair project is amazing. She said it could change things." James's hands tightened on the worn strap of his backpack. "It is amazing, honey. You're amazing." But his pride, that stubborn, foolish pride, wouldn't let him ask for help. Not from Jason's mom, not from anyone. They were Mitchells. They were fighters. Dropping her at the gates of Wellington Prep was like watching her step into another world. A world of crisp uniforms and expensive cars. A world he paid for with grease and sweat and sleepless nights. She turned and waved, her second-hand backpack covered in colorful patches to hide the worn spots. For a second, his heart felt like it was going to burst with a mix of love and sheer, terrifying determination. He would not fail her. He couldn't. At Pete's, the day started with a stack of work orders and a grim-faced boss. "Thompson's Mercedes needs a full service," Pete grumbled. "And the school called again, James, about Emma's tuition." The words hit him like a physical blow. "I'll have it by Friday," James said, his voice tighter than he intended. He'd skip meals. He'd pick up extra shifts. He'd do whatever it took. He had to. As he slid under the first car of the day, the familiar smell of motor oil filling his lungs, he thought about Emma's project. Something about sustainable energy. Something that could open doors to scholarships, to college, to a future he could only dream of for her. He just had to keep all the plates spinning. The tuition, the bills, the broken washing machine. It could all wait. Her dreams couldn't. He didn't know it yet, but across town, the woman who had his car was about to make all his problems feel terrifyingly small. She was about to turn his life inside out. The old Toyota felt alien in Sarah Chen's pristine, multi-million-dollar garage. It sat there, leaking a small puddle of oil onto the polished concrete floor, looking utterly out of place amongst the silent, gleaming ranks of her Teslas, Porsches, and vintage Ferraris. She hadn't slept. After her own car was towed, she'd spent the night driving his, circling the sleeping city, the car's honest rattles and groans a strange comfort after the sterile silence of her life. The turn signal that you had to hold down, the heater that took 10 minutes to warm up, it was real. It was flawed. It was perfect. Her assistant, Michael, hovered at the door to her penthouse office, his face a mask of professionally managed panic. "Miss Chen, the board is concerned. Your unannounced absence, the canceled interviews." "Michael," Sarah interrupted, her voice calm. She was still wearing the simple jeans and sweater from the day before. They felt more like armor than the designer suits that cost more than James Mitchell's car. "I need you to do some research for me. A man named James Mitchell. He's a mechanic at Pete's auto shop. The meeting with the Tokyo investors is in 10 minutes, Michael protested weakly. "They can wait," Sarah said, turning to her immense, wall-sized computer screen. The world's markets flickered across it, billions of dollars moving in the blink of an eye. She ignored them. "And Michael," she added, her fingers already flying across a keyboard, "I need you to arrange something for me, something quiet." Meanwhile, on a lurching city bus, James stared out at the rain-streaked city, his mind a frantic calculator of debt and deadlines. The tuition was due Friday. The power bill was a week overdue. The lost income from that morning's delivery shift was a hole in their budget he didn't know how to fill. His phone, a cheap prepaid model, buzzed in his pocket. An unknown number. "Your car is fine," a familiar, quiet voice said when he answered. It was her, the woman from the rain. "I can bring it to your work around noon if that's all right." "That would be perfect. Thank you," James said, relieved. He hesitated, a wave of embarrassment washing over him. "I'm sorry again about the condition of the car. It got me where I needed to go," she cut in softly. "Sometimes that's all that matters." There was an odd finality in her tone, as if she were talking about more than just his car. When he arrived at Pete's, he found a plain white envelope tucked inside his locker. He opened it. It was a receipt. His electricity bill, paid in full. A jolt went through him. It had to be a mistake, a clerical error. But a cold, creeping suspicion began to form in the pit of his stomach. At noon, exactly as promised, his old Toyota pulled into the garage. The woman, Sarah, he'd learned later, stepped out. She handed him the keys, her smile small and enigmatic. "Thank you," she said, her eyes holding his for a moment too long, "for reminding me of something I'd forgotten." And just like that, she was gone, disappearing into a sleek black town car that seemed to materialize out of nowhere, leaving James standing there with the faint scent of rain and a perfume that smelled like money he couldn't even imagine. He checked his car over. A mechanic's habit. Everything was there. The worn seats, the crack in the windshield, the faint smell of Emma's bubble gum. But as he drove it home that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. The engine ran smoother. The persistent rattle from the front axle was gone. He must be imagining it. Stress playing tricks on his mind. Later that night, long after Emma was asleep, he sat at his kitchen table, staring at the paid electricity bill. It wasn't a mistake. He knew it. He pulled his banking app up on his phone, his heart pounding. He froze. A new deposit, made 2 hours ago, for exactly $3,000, the precise amount of Emma's overdue tuition. There was no name, no source, just the money, sitting there silently in his account. This wasn't kindness anymore. It was something else, something unsettling. He walked to the window and looked down at the street. A sleek black car, the same one from the garage, was parked across the road, its engine off, a silent, watching sentinel in the dark. He wasn't imagining things. He was being targeted. But why? The next morning, before he took Emma to the bus stop, he decided to clean out the Toyota. A nagging feeling, a mechanic's instinct that something was out of place, wouldn't leave him alone. He checked under the seats in the glove compartment. Nothing. Then, his fingers brushed against something tucked deep inside the driver's side sun visor. It was small and cool to the touch. He pulled it out. It wasn't a forgotten pair of sunglasses. It was a tiny metallic object, a USB drive, but it was unlike any he'd ever seen. It was sleek, black, with no branding, no logos, just a single, almost invisible seam running down its side. His heart began to hammer against his ribs. This was left there on purpose. This was a message. He pocketed the drive, his mind racing. Who was this woman? Why the secrecy? Why the money, the surveillance, the strange high-tech gadget left in his 20-year-old car? He dropped a sleeping Emma off at school, his mind a million miles away. He had to know. Back in his apartment, he hesitated for only a second before plugging the mysterious drive into his old, sputtering laptop. The computer whirred. A single folder appeared on the screen. He clicked it open. There was one file inside. His blood ran cold. The file was named Emma_project_MK1. He stared at the screen, his breath caught in his throat. It was an audio file. With trembling hands, he double-clicked it. The sound of a quiet room filled his apartment, papers rustling, and then Emma's voice. His Emma. She was humming to herself, talking through her equations, the way she always did when she was deep in thought. It was a recording, taken from inside their apartment. He felt a wave of nausea. They had bugged his home. They had recorded his daughter. His hands started to shake, a primal rage building inside him. This wasn't about kindness. This was a violation, an invasion of the deepest, most terrifying kind. As he listened, frozen in horror, his phone buzzed. An unknown number, a text message. "You found our little gift. Smart man. Now forget you ever saw it. Walk away. Don't ask questions. Don't contact her again. We're watching. This is your only warning." The words on the screen blurred. This wasn't a game. This was a threat, and his daughter was at the center of it. The mysterious woman, the money, the surveillance, It all snapped into a horrifying picture. He had stumbled into something dark and dangerous. He had thought he was a good Samaritan, but now he felt like a fool who had just led a wolf right to his own front door. Rage is a powerful fuel. It burned away James's fear, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. They thought they could scare him. They thought they could threaten his daughter and he would just back down. They had no idea who they were dealing with. He wasn't just a mechanic. He was a father, and a father's love is the most dangerous weapon in the world. He had one clue, a flimsy paper receipt he'd found balled up under the passenger seat of his car after she'd returned it. A fancy coffee shop downtown called the Gilded Bean. It was a long shot, but it was all he had. He called Pete, told him he had a family emergency, and took the bus downtown, the mysterious USB drive a heavy weight in his pocket. The Gilded Bean was a world away from his life. People in sharp suits typed on glowing laptops, speaking in hushed, important tones. He felt out of place in his worn jeans and work jacket, but he didn't care. He showed the barista the receipt. "I'm looking for a woman who was here a couple of nights ago. She might be a regular." He described her. Simple clothes, quiet, looked like she didn't belong. The barista shrugged. "Sorry, man. We get a lot of people." But as James turned to leave, a voice cut through the murmur of the cafe. "I believe you're looking for me." It was her, Sarah. She was sitting in a plush armchair in the corner, a laptop open in front of her. But this wasn't the drenched, grateful woman from the rain. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun. She wore an expensive-looking gray silk blouse. Her eyes, when they met his, were not warm or kind. They were as cold and sharp as chips of ice. "We need to talk," James said, his voice low and steady. "Outside." She raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, a small, condescending smile playing on her lips. "I don't think so. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You bugged my apartment. You recorded my daughter. You threatened me." For the first time, a flicker of something, surprise, annoyance, crossed her face. She closed her laptop with a soft click. "You're mistaken." "Am I?" James slid the USB drive across the table. Emma_project_MK1. Ring any bells? Her eyes narrowed. She picked up the drive, examining it between her perfectly manicured fingers. "I have no idea what this is. You must have me confused with someone else." The blatant denial, the sheer arrogance of it, sent a fresh surge of anger through him. "You think I'm an idiot? You think you can just play games with my family's life?" "I think," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous purr, "that you are a simple mechanic who is in way over his head. You did a small kindness. You were compensated for it. Generously, I might add. The transaction is complete. I suggest you go back to your simple life and forget this ever happened." Her words were like daggers. Simple mechanic. Simple life. She was dismissing him, dismissing his entire world as if it were a speck of dust on her expensive shoes. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly on the floor. Every head in the cafe turned. "This isn't over," he said, his voice shaking with contained fury. "Not by a long shot." As he stormed out of the cafe, his mind was a whirlwind of confusion and rage. Her entire personality had changed. The vulnerable woman in the rain was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating stranger. Was it an act? Was the first meeting the lie? Or was this? He got his answer when he arrived back at his apartment building. A brand new, top-of-the-line washing machine was being uncrated in the hallway. "Delivery from Mitchell, apartment 3B, the delivery man said, checking his clipboard. "Paid for in full. Anonymous." James stared at the gleaming white appliance. It was the exact model he and Emma had looked at online, the one he'd told her they could never afford. This wasn't help. This was a message, a power play. "I can do whatever I want. I can walk into your life and change it, and you are powerless to stop me." He felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold. As the delivery men maneuvered the machine into his apartment, he looked out the window. The black car was there again, parked in the same spot, watching. Always watching. He was a fly caught in a web, and every move he made just seemed to tangle him deeper. The next call was from Wellington Prep. The principal, a woman who usually only spoke to him about overdue payments, sounded uncharacteristically cheerful. "Mr. Mitchell, I have the most wonderful news. An anonymous benefactor has stepped forward and paid Emma's tuition, not just for this semester, but for the rest of her time at Wellington." James felt the phone slip in his sweaty palm. Anonymous? Yes, they wish to remain completely private. Isn't it a miracle? A miracle. That's what she called it. James felt like he was going to be sick. This wasn't a miracle. It was a tightening noose. Every gift was another thread in the web she was weaving around them. He felt trapped, suffocated by a generosity that felt more like a threat. He was losing control of his own life, piece by piece. He tried to refuse. He told the principal they didn't need the charity. She laughed, a polite, confused sound. "Mr. Mitchell, it's already been processed. It's non-refundable. Your daughter's education is secured." Secured. The word sounded like a prison sentence. That night, he couldn't sleep. He sat in the dark of his living room, staring at the silent, watching car across the street. Who was she? A mob boss? Some kind of government agent? The questions circled endlessly in his mind, each one darker than the last. He felt an overwhelming urge to pack a bag, grab Emma, and just run. Disappear. But where would they go? She had found them so easily. She could find them again. He needed leverage. He needed to know who he was fighting. He went back to the only clue he had, the USB drive. He wasn't a computer expert, but he was a mechanic. He knew how to take things apart and see how they worked. He spent hours online, researching the drive's unusual design. He learned about metadata, the hidden information embedded in digital files. Using a free program he downloaded, he managed to extract a single, tiny piece of information from the audio file's properties. A company name. Chen Tech. His fingers flew across the keyboard. He typed Chen Tech into the search bar. The results flooded the screen. News articles, financial reports, stock prices, and a face. Her face. The woman from the rain, the cold woman from the coffee shop. He clicked on the first article. It was from Forbes magazine. The headline hit him like a physical punch, knocking the air from his lungs. The Phantom of Silicon Valley, Sarah Chen, the world's most reclusive billionaire, on her tech empire. Billionaire. The word didn't even seem real. He stared at the picture. Sarah Chen, CEO and founder of Chen Tech, a global technology empire worth hundreds of billions of dollars. A woman who hadn't been photographed in public in over 5 years. A woman whose life was a fortress of privacy and security. It didn't make sense. None of it. Why would a billionaire be driving a nondescript sedan in the rain? Why would she stage a breakdown? Why would she personally get involved with a random mechanic and his daughter? The small, unsettling gifts suddenly looked different. Paying his bills, buying him a washing machine, to her, that was less than pocket change. It was a rounding error. A new, more terrifying thought began to form in his mind. This wasn't about him at all. It was about Emma. Emma_project_MK1. Her science fair project. He ran to Emma's room. She was asleep, her project notebook lying open on her desk. He picked it up. It was filled with her neat handwriting and complex diagrams about sustainable energy. To him, it was just his daughter's brilliant homework. But to a tech billionaire, what did she see in these pages? He suddenly felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. This wasn't a game of intimidation. This was a corporate maneuver. She wasn't trying to scare him. She was trying to get to Emma's project. Maybe it wasn't just a school project. Maybe his daughter, his brilliant, innocent 12-year-old daughter, had accidentally stumbled upon something valuable. Something a billionaire would go to any lengths to acquire. His phone buzzed, startling him. It was her. A text from a new number. "I see you've been doing your homework. Good. Now we can have a real conversation. My car will be outside in 5 minutes. Get in. It's time you learned what's really at stake. The black car glided to a stop in front of him, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. The back door opened with a soft, expensive-sounding thud. James got in. The interior smelled of leather and ozone. Sarah Chen sat across from him, no longer playing the part of the simple traveler or the cold executive. This was the real her, he suspected. Calm, focused, and radiating an intensity that was almost frightening. "You're a hard man to convince, James Mitchell," she said as the car pulled silently away from the curb. "I admire that." "What do you want?" James asked, his voice flat. "Why the games? Why the threats?" "They weren't threats," she corrected. "They were tests, and clumsy attempts to help. My people aren't exactly subtle." She gestured out the window. "I live in a world of sharks, James. Everyone wants something. Loyalty is a commodity, bought and sold. Before I could bring you into my world, I had to know if you could be trusted. I had to know if you'd run when things got difficult. I had to know if you could be bought." "Bought?" James scoffed. "You paid my bills. You bought me an appliance." "Pocket change," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "A real offer would have been 7 figures. You'd be surprised how many people have a price. You, it seems, do not. You just got angry. That's good. That's what I needed to see." The car was heading out of the city, towards the gleaming office parks of the tech corridor. "This isn't about you, James," she said, her voice softening slightly. "Not really. It's about Emma." She tapped a command into a tablet that materialized from the armrest. A holographic image of Emma's project notebook appeared in the air between them, the pages turning slowly. "Your late wife," Sarah began. "Maria. She was a theoretical physicist, wasn't she? Before she gave it all up." James stared at her, stunned. "How did you—" "I know everything, James. It's my business to know things. Maria left behind her research notes. Emma found them. She thought they were just old college papers." Sarah zoomed in on a series of complex equations in the hologram. "These aren't college notes. This is a theoretical framework for a new type of energy storage. A solid-state battery with a near-zero discharge rate and a density 100 times greater than anything that currently exists. It's the holy grail of energy, James. It would change the world. Your wife was on the verge of a breakthrough, but she never finished the work." She looked at him, her eyes burning with intensity. "Emma did. She didn't even realize it. She was just doing her science fair project. She solved the final equation. She bridged the gap. She made it work." James felt the world tilt on its axis. Emma's project wasn't just a project, it was a revolution. "The USB drive I planted in your car," Sarah continued. "It wasn't just a recorder. It was a passive data collector. It scanned for any wireless data signals related to the project. I needed to confirm my suspicions without alerting anyone." "Alerting who?" James whispered, his throat dry. "This is where it gets dangerous," Sarah said, her face grim. "I'm not the only one who knew about your wife's research. My biggest competitor, a ruthless corporation called Omnicorp, has been trying to get their hands on it for years. Their CEO, a man named Marcus Thorne, will stop at nothing. He's a monster who believes ethics are for the weak." The car pulled up to a massive, gleaming glass building that pierced the sky, the Chentech World Headquarters. "Omnicorp has been watching your family for months," Sarah said as the doors opened. "They suspected Emma might have the potential to finish her mother's work. The night I staged my breakdown, I was intercepting an Omnicorp team on their way to your apartment. They weren't there to make a friendly offer, James. They were there to take the research. And your daughter." James's blood turned to ice. He finally understood. The surveillance, the secrecy, the tests. Sarah hadn't been targeting him. She had been protecting them. She had put herself between his family and a predator he never even knew existed. "Omnicorp knows I have you now," Sarah said, leading him through the silent, cathedral-like lobby of her building. "They know the game has changed, and they are not going to take it lying down. They are going to come after you. They are going to come after Emma, and they are going to use every dirty trick in the book to tear you apart." As they stepped into a private elevator that shot upwards with silent, gut-wrenching speed, Sarah turned to him. "Welcome to the war, James. Your daughter's mind is the battlefield, and you're now standing on the front lines." The revelation hit James like a physical blow. His life, which he thought was a simple story of struggle and survival, was actually the epicenter of a corporate war. His daughter wasn't just a brilliant kid. She was a target. Sarah Chen wasn't a mysterious benefactor. She was a general, and he had just been drafted. "So what now?" James asked, his voice hoarse as the elevator opened into a breathtaking penthouse office with a 360-degree view of the city. "Now we fight back," Sarah said, moving to a large desk that looked like it was carved from a single piece of obsidian. "First, we secure you. Omnicorp's favorite tactic is leverage. They'll look for any weakness, any debt, any pressure point. Your finances, your apartment, your job, they're all vulnerabilities. We need to remove them from the board." Before he could protest, her fingers were flying across a transparent screen. "My real estate division will have you and Emma in a new, secure apartment by tomorrow. It's in a gated community with my best security team on site. The lease will be in a corporate name, untraceable." She didn't look up. "You'll need a new job. Working at Pete's puts you out in the open. I'm creating a new position for you here at Chen Tech, head of the Practical Application Division. Your mechanical skills are exactly what my engineers lack. The salary will be more than enough to remove any financial pressure." James felt a surge of his old pride. "I don't want your charity, Sarah." "This isn't charity," she snapped, looking up at him, her eyes flashing. "This is strategy. Do you think Marcus Thorne plays by the rules of pride and honor? He will use your poverty against you. He will use your love for your daughter against you. We need to arm you, James. In this war, money and security are your armor and your sword. Stop thinking like a mechanic and start thinking like a soldier." The words stung, but he knew she was right. His pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. The safety of his daughter was the only thing that mattered. "Okay," he said, his voice firm. "What's the next move?" Sarah's face softened. "The next move is to protect the asset, Emma's mind." She explained her plan. Emma would be enrolled in a special advanced program at Chen Tech, disguised as a youth mentorship initiative. She'd have access to their labs, their resources, and most importantly, their security. They would help her develop her project under the guise of an accelerated learning program. But as Sarah outlined the details, James felt a new kind of dread. This world of corporate espionage, of danger and deception, it wasn't a world for a 12-year-old girl. "She's just a kid, Sarah. She loves science. She loves inventing things. This will break her. It will break her if Omnicorp gets to her first," Sarah countered grimly. "With me, she gets to be a scientist. With them, she becomes a piece of property. This is the only way to let her keep her dream, James. We just have to build a fortress around it." The next few days were a blur. James and Emma moved into a sleek, modern apartment that felt more like a luxury hotel. Emma was ecstatic, her eyes wide at the sight of her own room with a built-in desk and a view of a tranquil park. She thought they'd won the lottery. James let her believe it. The truth was too heavy a burden for her to carry. Not yet. James started his new job at Chen Tech. He was met with skepticism by the team of young, brilliant engineers with degrees from MIT and Stanford. They saw a simple garage mechanic. But that changed the first day when he solved a persistent overheating problem in their new hybrid engine prototype with a simple, practical fix they had overlooked for months. He didn't have their education, but he had something they didn't: decades of real-world experience. He had earned his place. But the peace was short-lived. Just as they were starting to feel safe, Omnicorp made its move, and it was more cunning and cruel than either of them could have imagined. It came in the form of a knock on the door. When James opened it, his heart stopped. Standing there was Maria, his ex-wife. She hadn't aged a day, still beautiful, still radiating that same restless ambition that had driven her away. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a man in a sharp $1,000 suit, a smug smile on his face. a lawyer. "James," Maria said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I heard you'd fallen in with a dangerous crowd. I was so worried." "What are you doing here, Maria?" James asked, his body tensing. "I'm here for my daughter," she said, the fake concern vanishing, replaced by a cold hardness. "I'm suing for full custody. A man involved in corporate espionage and who knows what else is not a fit parent. The court will see that. Emma is coming with me." James stared at her, horrified. He saw the strings being pulled. He saw the hand of Marcus Thorne. Omnicorp couldn't get to Emma's research through force, so they were using the law. They were using his own family against him. Maria, who hadn't seen her daughter in 5 years, who had shown no interest in her life, was now playing the part of the concerned mother. She had found his ultimate pressure point. She had found a way to tear his world apart from the inside. The legal battle was a nightmare. Omnicorp's lawyers, fronted by Maria, painted James as an unstable, reckless man who had suddenly come into unexplained wealth. They twisted his new job, his new apartment, his association with Sarah Chen, into a sinister plot. They claimed he was endangering Emma by involving her in a dangerous corporate war. Every gift from Sarah, every step they had taken to protect themselves, was used as a weapon against him. "She's lying," James told Sarah, pacing the floor of her office like a caged animal. "Maria doesn't care about Emma. She just wants money." "I know," Sarah said, her face grim as she scanned the legal documents on her screen. "Omnicorp is funding the entire lawsuit. We traced the payments to an offshore account linked to one of their shell corporations. They're paying Maria $2 million to play this part." The betrayal cut deeper than any corporate threat. The woman he had once loved, the mother of his child, was selling their daughter's future for a paycheck. "We have to tell Emma the truth," James said finally. "She has to know what's happening." Sarah nodded slowly. "I agree. She's at the center of this. She deserves to know why." Telling Emma was the hardest thing James had ever done. He and Sarah sat her down in the living room of their new apartment. He watched his daughter's face as the story unfolded. Her mother's hidden research, the power of her own discovery, the corporate war raging around them. He saw confusion, then fear, and then something else. Something he hadn't expected. A quiet, steely resolve. The same resolve he felt himself. She was a Mitchell, after all. "So," Emma said, her voice small but steady after he had finished. "Mom is working for the bad guys?" "Yes, honey," James said, his heart breaking. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up, her eyes clear and focused. "Then we have to beat them." It was as if a switch had been flipped. Emma was no longer just a participant. She was a player. She threw herself into her work in the Chentech labs not just as a student, but as a co-conspirator. She worked with Sarah's top engineers, pushing her own designs further, adding layers of encryption and false data trails that would be impossible for an outsider to decipher. She was weaponizing her own genius. While Sarah's legal team fought Maria in the courtroom, James found a new role for himself. He was their man on the ground. He used his mechanic's intuition, his ability to see how things worked in the real world. He started noticing things Sarah's high-tech security missed. He found a listening device, disguised as a bolt, on the undercarriage of his company car. He noticed an Omnicorp surveillance van that had been painted to look like a plumber's truck. But Omnicorp had another card to play. They went after Pete, James's old boss. They found out Pete had a gambling problem, that he was deep in debt to a dangerous loan shark. They offered to clear his debts. All he had to do was plant a device inside the Chentech network during his next visit. Pete called James, his voice shaking. "I can't do it, James. You've been like a son to me, but these guys, they're threatening my family." James felt a cold dread. Pete was a good man, caught in a trap. Omnicorp was burning every bridge he had, isolating him, trying to break him. "Don't do anything," James told him. "Let me handle it." He went to Sarah. "We can't let them do this to him." Sarah was quiet for a moment. This is what they do, James. They find the cracks in people's lives and they break them open. But you're right. She picked up her phone. We're going to turn this around. It's time to stop playing defense. Sarah's plan was elegant and ruthless. She had her people contact the loan shark Pete was indebted to. They didn't just pay off the debt, they bought the entire loan shark's operation. Suddenly, the man threatening Pete worked for Sarah Chen. The threat was neutralized. Then, she sent a team to Pete's garage. They didn't just offer him protection, they offered him a partnership. Chen Tech bought his garage, transforming it into a state-of-the-art training facility for a new generation of mechanics, with Pete as the head manager. They had turned OmniCorp's weapon into a shield and an asset. But the masterstroke was James's idea. They think I'm just a mechanic, he told Sarah. Let's use that. He had Pete agree to OmniCorp's deal. He would plant their device. But the device Pete planted wasn't the one OmniCorp had given him. It was a modified version, designed by Emma and built by James, a Trojan horse. It wouldn't just give OmniCorp access to the Chentech network, it would give Chentech access to theirs. The trap was set. Now, all they had to do was wait for the sharks to bite. And the perfect opportunity was just around the corner, the state science fair. The one place Emma would have to present her project in public. It was the showdown they had all been preparing for. The state science fair was a chaotic symphony of buzzing projects and excited kids. But for James, it felt like a battlefield. He could feel the eyes on them. OmniCorp agents, disguised as parents, judges, and journalists, were everywhere. He moved through the crowd, a protective shadow at his daughter's side, Sarah a few steps away communicating with her security team through a nearly invisible earpiece. Emma's display was the star of the show. Her project, now titled Project Legacy, was a marvel of elegant design and revolutionary science. But it was all a brilliant piece of theater. The real project, the core of her discovery, was safely locked away in Chentech's most secure servers. What she was presenting was the bait. It looks perfect, Sarah murmured to James. OmniCorp's tech team is scanning her display right now. They're trying to wirelessly copy her data. And are they getting it? James asked, his heart pounding. Oh, yes, Sarah said with a thin, predatory smile. They're getting exactly what we want them to get. Emma was a natural. She explained her project with a confidence that belied her years, fielding questions from judges with the poise of a seasoned scientist. James watched, his chest swelling with pride. This was his daughter, his Einstein, not a victim, but a warrior. As Emma's presentation concluded, a man in a sharp suit, Marcus Thorne himself, OmniCorp's CEO, approached the stage. He was playing the part of an impressed tech mogul. Incredible work, young lady, he said, his voice smooth as silk. OmniCorp would like to offer you a full scholarship to any university of your choice and a position in our Youth Innovator program. It was a public power play, designed to corner them. But Emma was ready. She smiled sweetly at him. Thank you, Mr. Thorne, but I'm already part of a program with Chentech. The crowd murmured, a public rejection. Thorne's smile tightened for a fraction of a second. The first blow had been struck. Meanwhile, miles away, the Trojan horse was doing its work. The data OmniCorp had stolen from Emma's presentation was a sophisticated virus. As their tech team uploaded it to their central servers, it began to spread, not destroying data, but copying it. Every file, every email, every secret project, all of it was being funneled directly to a secure Chentech server. The final piece of the puzzle was the custody hearing. It was scheduled for the next day. Maria sat there, looking confident, her lawyers armed with a mountain of fabricated evidence against James. They had no idea what was coming. As Maria's lawyer began his closing statement, Sarah's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, we have new evidence to present. The courtroom buzzed. On the large screens, a series of documents appeared. Bank statements showing the $2 million payment from an OmniCorp shell company to Maria. Taped phone conversations where Maria and OmniCorp's lawyers conspired to fabricate evidence. emails detailing their entire strategy to use the custody case as leverage. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Maria's face went white. Her lawyers were speechless. It was a complete and utter checkmate. The case was dismissed. A federal investigation into Omnicorp for witness tampering and corporate espionage was launched on the spot. Maria, stripped of her lies and her payout, fled the courthouse, a disgraced figure disappearing into the crowd. At the same moment, across town, Marcus Thorne was presenting his board of directors with the stolen data from Emma's project. But when he tried to access the files, the screens went black. Then, a single message appeared, written in glowing green text, the Chentech logo, and beneath it, "Thank you for your cooperation." The virus had finished its work. It then executed its final command, a complete system wipe. Omnicorp was technologically crippled, their secrets exposed, their empire beginning to crumble. James stood outside the courthouse, Emma's hand in his. It was over. They had won. They hadn't just survived. They had fought back and dismantled the machine that had tried to destroy them. Pete ran up, clapping him on the back, a huge grin on his face. Mrs. Rodriguez was there too, with a bag of celebratory cookies. Sarah walked over, her usual intense expression replaced with a genuine, tired smile. "It's done," she said. "They won't be bothering you again." "We did it," James said, looking from Sarah to Emma. "No," Sarah corrected gently. "You did it, James. Your kindness started it. Your courage finished it." He looked at his daughter, who was already excitedly explaining to Pete how she designed the Trojan horse. She wasn't just safe, she was thriving. She had faced the monsters and discovered she was stronger than they were. A year later, James stood in a gleaming new wing of the Chentech headquarters, the Mitchell Center for Practical Innovation. It was his department. He led a team that bridged the gap between theoretical science and real-world application. He wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was an innovator. Emma, now a confident 14-year-old, was a rising star in the world of science, mentoring other young students in the Project Legacy program, a foundation Sarah had started to help gifted kids from underprivileged backgrounds. Her project had become the cornerstone of Chentech's new sustainable energy division. In the center of the lobby, under a soft spotlight, sat a fully restored 1998 Toyota Corolla. Its dings and rust spots had been lovingly preserved. A small brass plaque was mounted beside it. It read, "Innovation begins with kindness. And sometimes it begins with a little bit of rain." James often found himself standing there just looking at the car. It was a reminder of where he came from and how far they had traveled. Sarah found him there one afternoon, a rare, quiet moment in their busy lives. "Thinking about that night?" she asked. "Always," he said. "I thought I was just lending a stranger my car." Sarah smiled, that warm, genuine smile he had come to know. "You were. But you were also throwing a stone into a pond. You just couldn't see the ripples." They stood in silence for a moment, watching Emma across the lobby, enthusiastically explaining a complex equation to a group of new students. She was happy. She was safe. She was changing the world. All because one night, in a storm, a man with almost nothing gave everything he had. Sometimes the biggest risks we take aren't for money or for power. They're for each other. And sometimes a single act of kindness isn't just a moment in time. It's a choice that echoes through a lifetime, proving that the best parts of our humanity can't be bought, sold, or stolen. They can only be given away freely. If you believe that one person's choice can ripple out to change the world, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the world is full of incredible stories, and you won't want to miss the one we have for you tomorrow.